All right, seeing it's now 5:30, we can go ahead and get started. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us here at PRT. We'd like to welcome you to our 5-year light rail transit investment program update. My name is Andrew Carr. I'm the communications manager of transit projects, and I'll be monitoring tonight. Before we begin the meeting, there's just a few housekeeping items. The first, for participants who wish to use live captions, this feature is enabled for this meeting. To use those, you just go up to the three dots toward the right of your screen, click on those, and turn on live captions. For participants who wish to use the American Sign Language interpreter service, we have Ellie Brokenshire with us here tonight. Her screen has been pinned, so it should be visible for all attendees. Participants are asked to remain muted throughout the presentation. Those who have dialed in by phone may use *6 on your keypad to mute and unmute yourselves. The meeting moderator may mute participants throughout the meeting as necessary to reduce feedback. We'll have time for questions toward the end of the meeting, and participants are asked to use the raise your hand feature to ask a question and remain muted until called upon to speak. That feature is up there in the middle of your screen. Participants who wish to speak are asked to clearly state their name prior to asking a question or providing a comment. And one last thing, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be uploaded to our website at rideprt.org/railprojects. Thank you, and with that, I'll turn it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Catherine Kellerman.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Andrew. This is Catherine Kellerman. As Andrew said, I'm the CEO here at Pittsburgh Regional Transit. Used to be Port Authority, which I'm sure you still see on our trains. And I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I know there's a lot going on a Wednesday, and you have a lot of things you can do, so really appreciate your time. You probably know that back in 2023, we began a big 5-year push of heavy investment into our rail system.
And then he's been using your car with your permission. Well, no, we agreed that he was going to pay for
I'm waiting for. Are we good? All right. Well, let's come back to that. We started a 5-year capital push back in 2023. It will be a cumulative investment of $150 million in our rail system. It's not just our rail cars that are old. We have aging infrastructure. We have everything is safe, but we have patches of various items that we need to get updated all at one time. Some of our switches are old enough to be in the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, which is great if you're a collector of things, but not necessarily the way we want to run our rail system. A great example of recent projects is this summer, we were able to shut down the Red Line and tackle 5 or 6 projects all at one time, rather than come in and single track and inconvenience folks for a much longer time frame. We could take the whole line down and then have the ability to work much faster and also more efficiently. We also were able to get out our bus shuttles and tie them into a schedule information, so we could get folks where they needed to go. I know I took the rail shuttle. Many of the folks from PRT on this call also took the shuttle to get from A to B. Again, shuttles are fun, but it's not just for fun. We have an aging system. We have aging infrastructure. Weather is different up here, so it's a little harder on a rail system. We have got to get our system completely updated. It is completely safe, but it is also vintage in many places. We have 2 projects slated to start in 2025. They will be big. Again, everything is safe, but these projects, these areas won't be safe if we don't come in and fix them now. So it will feel like a lot of work, but it is a work which is necessary for us to be able to stay safe and know that you can ride just as safely as I or anybody in my family. So we've got to get working on this. We also want to get to a situation where we're not shutting down, like the Silver Line shut down today because we've got some problematic welds up on our electrical system. When we can come back and do these renovations in one fell swoop, you don't have this day's broken, that day's broken. It's much easier for us to be able to get everything handled. So looking forward to being able to deliver that for you. So I'm going to turn this over to our chief engineer, who is Greg O'Hare. And again, thanks for getting started and spending your evening with us.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Good evening, everybody. I'm Greg O'Hare, chief engineer here at PRT. And we're going to go through and talk about our 5-year light rail investment program, as Catherine had mentioned. First, we'll do a little bit of a recap. But before we move on to the next slide, I want to hand it off to Amy if she wanted to say anything before we move into the rest of the program.
Just a welcome from everyone. I'm Amy Silverman. I'm the Chief Development Officer, and I oversee engineering and scheduling, which you will hear from both of our heads of this evening about a few different of these projects. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Greg, and I'll keep us moving on the slides. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So here we'll talk a little bit about a refresh for everyone on the investment program here on the rail line. At PRT, we've broken this into stages that kind of coincide with the calendar years, essentially from 22, 23, all the way through 2028, so a 5-year program. As you'll see, there's a lot of projects listed on here. The projects with check marks are projects that are complete or nearing completion. So in 22 through 25, this current time frame that we've just been in is we've started work on the CBD plinth replacement project, and we still have one phase left to go, which I'll talk about in some upcoming slides. We're just about complete on our work on the light rail station improvement project. Mount Lebanon tunnel fan replacement project is just about complete as well too. There is a little overlap you'll see here between the stage 1 and stage 2. In 2024, was where we did the Red Line project bundling, which was a culmination of several different projects between the guarded rail replacement project and some of the other items, which we'll talk about in some of the upcoming slides. And then upcoming in stage 3, which will be in calendar years 2025 through 2026, is Mount Washington Transit Tunnel Rail Replacement Project, Mount Lebanon Tunnel Rail Replacement Project, Velasco High Platform Station as well too. And then finalizing this portion of the program through 26 and 28 will be a Panhandle Bridge rehabilitation, and then Station Square and Dormont Station improvement projects. Next slide, please. So first, we'll talk about some of the accomplishments that PRT had here, some of the projects that we completed here in 2024. So the Central Business District, the plinth replacement project. So that project, as noted previously in the previous slides, we started that in 2022, and we completed a 2-month closure phase here this year in the May-June timeframe. The overall project value, just for folks edification, is about $35 million. So it's a pretty significant investment. The picture to the right that you'll see is a section of the completed plinth repairs that were done. This was prior to cleanup, but this was at the end of the actual physical work just before cleanup. And then also we in this past calendar year in the summertime, as Catherine had mentioned, was the Red Line project where we bundled in several projects during a 2-month closure here this summer. That went quite successful from the construction standpoint. And the work that was performed there was a guarded rail replacement work at several locations throughout the system along the Red Line, Neald and Traymore Avenue crossover switch tie replacement. So it's 2 separate projects there. And then there was a Kelton Street stabilization, which was the stabilization of the trackway in the Kelton Street area. So that project value overall culminated about $20 million. So it's another significant investment of improvement to the rail line. So here's a couple pictures of a completed grade crossing. So as part of the guarded rail replacement project, one of the work areas was at Willow Avenue and Castle Shannon. On the left-hand side, you can see what the before picture looked like before construction, and all of the rail was replaced. The grade crossing was replaced. Underneath the rail, there's railroad ties and ballast material, and whatnot. Ballast is just the rock that helps to support the ties. And on the right-hand side, this is what it looked like after it was completed, with a new rail and a new grade crossing there to allow much smoother travel for both the trains along the trackway, and then also for the vehicles that traverse across the tracks as well too. So this project here is the station and tunnel improvement project. There's a couple items here. Is the light rail station improvements, which I noted earlier. We're just about finishing up with this project, which we should be finished up here in the next couple weeks. That was work over 18 stations, which is pretty significant amount of work that was performed. A lot of stated good repair type work, and then also refreshing from painting and things of that nature as well too. We took that opportunity to refresh those stations, and the overall project value is about $16 million for that work. And then another project we're just about finishing completing here in the next couple weeks as well too is the Mount Lebanon Tunnel fan replacement project. And that particular project is about a value of about $10 million. The picture on the right-hand side is an example of the one of the stations at Library Line, which is about 20 years old. And it was in need of a significant amount of repairs. And as you can see here from this picture at completion, it looks like it's a brand new station. So next we'll talk about some upcoming rail projects here for this next calendar year, the upcoming calendar year in 2025. So in this next calendar year here, we're hoping to finish or planning on finishing the CBD plinth replacement project. That'll consist of a 2-month closure starting in January through February of 2025. And that should complete the entire project. The overall project value is about $35 million. On the left-hand side, is a picture of what is the concrete plinth, and also shows that the concrete plinth is cracked up, or what we like to call in the engineering term is spalling and delamination. But you can see that concrete is not in good shape in the existing condition. The concrete plinths, for everyone's knowledge, is what the rail is supported by, basically anchored to. The rail obviously is what the trains run on. And on the right-hand side is an aerial view of the downtown Pittsburgh. And highlighted is the project limits is essentially the subway or the tunnel that's beneath the roadway downtown in the city. That goes from pretty close to the Liberty Bridge, where the Boulevard of the Allies is, down through 6th Avenue, and then to Liberty to where Gateway Station is. So the next project that we're going to be starting to work on, this project should start February 23rd through October of 2025, is the Mount Washington Tunnel Rail Replacement Project. So it's an 8-month closure. The approximate cost is about $26 million, another significant investment. The scope of work for folks' knowledge is embedded track replacement, overhead catenary wire and support component replacement, concrete pavement replacement, electrical duct bank repairs, tunnel drainage replacement, and then tunnel liner shotcrete repairs. On the right-hand side is a picture inside the tunnel, which a lot of folks don't necessarily always get to see unless you're sitting in the front of the train. You get to kind of see down the tunnel. But there you can see is the rail, which the trains run on, is embedded in concrete. So concrete allows the buses to also utilize this tunnel as well too. And all of that is going to get ripped out and replaced. So here's an aerial view. The dashed lines, the dashed red and yellow lines, is where the tunnel is. So it kind of shows from South Hills Junction down to Station Square. The tunnel will be fully closed during this time, and PRT will have detour operations for buses and trains, which we'll talk about in a few slides ahead with some of our service folks can explain through that. But wanted folks just to have an understanding is that the tunnel will be closed and kind of where the tunnel runs through. So another project that we're looking to start probably later in 2025 and in through 2026 is the Belasco High Platform Station. So this will be a new station at Belasco in the Beechwood neighborhood. It's currently in design. The approximate value is about $7 million. We anticipate 1 weekend closure to perform the work and 11 weekends of single track. So that's from the impact to operations. Work will go on during regular hours with minimal impact to any operations. The scope of work for this is the construction of a mini high block station. That'll consist of drilled micropile foundations and some of the other fun engineering stuff that I like to think about. But from the amenity perspective, it will have ADA access ramps for this. So it'll have a high platform station that'll be accessible for folks to be able to board the high doors on the trains, which is a huge improvement compared to the current conditions that are out there. There will be a canopy with glass and windscreen, nice station lighting, other passenger amenities, stainless steel railings. The project also includes pavement marking and signage, and those type of nice amenities that we want to see on all of our new stations. And the left-hand side and the bottom was a rendering of the station, so folks can kind of see and visualize what the station would look like. The next project that we're looking to start towards the latter part of 2025 is the Mount Lebanon Tunnel Rail Replacement Project. So this project will be replacing the rail that's in the tunnel. The two pictures there are the picture on the left-hand side is a picture from outside of the Mount Lebanon Tunnel on the Mount Lebanon station side looking towards the tunnel. And then on the right-hand side is a picture inside one of the tunnels. There are two tunnels that run underneath Mount Lebanon and Dormont, between Mount Lebanon Station and Dormont Station. We'll be performing that work under single track operations, whereas one tunnel will always be open for transit rail traffic. It's currently in design, and we anticipate an approximate value of about $26 million for this particular project. And then some projects beyond 2025, just for folks' awareness, is the Panhandle Bridge rehabilitation project. That's the bridge that goes over the Monongahela River that carries the light rail traffic from Station Square to downtown. It's currently in design. We anticipate a project value of about $65 million overall. Additionally, we also have Station Square and Dormont Station improvement projects, which we anticipate to start in 2026. It's currently in design with a value of about $16 million. On the upper right-hand side is just a rendering of Station Square for those improvements at Station Square. And the bottom left-hand side is a picture of the Panhandle Bridge for those that may not be familiar. Now, I do want to mention briefly with the Station Square and Dormont Station improvements. There will also be some improvements in and around the area of the lower Mon Incline Station as well too, that will allow for a public plaza to be installed or constructed in that area too, to allow a nice view shed of the historic building, and then also allow a little parklet for people, to hang out and whatnot there. And now I will turn it over to Amy and some others to talk about some of the service-related impacts.
Yep, we're going to throw it to Chuck Rumpala. Chuck, you are up.
Thanks, Amy and Greg, and good evening, everyone. My name's Chuck Rumpala. I'm the Director of Special Services, Events, and Detours in the Operations Group here at Pittsburgh Regional Transit, and I welcome you to tonight's meeting. So, looking at Greg's slides and all his descriptions about all the wonderful improvements that will occur along the light rail transit system, the basic question is, that's great, Greg. How do I keep going to downtown and the North Shore? Well, we have two different options to do that, depending on the phase. The first one will be in January of 2025, so that we can complete the plinth work that Greg has described very well. The first part and the most critical part is the plinth or concrete that rests underneath the rail of our switches, sometimes known by others as Midtown, but right before our Steel Plaza station, as you come into and out of the downtown subway. The switches are critical. They both transport light rail vehicles to our main line, to our North Shore connector, and also to our Penn Station spur over to our East Busway. And if they fail, nothing moves. So as mentioned, they are critical, and we want to attack those first, get those repaired and replaced, and move forward from there. To do that, this will require the termination and the turnback of all scheduled rail service from the South Hills to the very first station, ideally named First Avenue Station, just behind PNC First Side and at the intersection of First Avenue and Tri Street, for those that are looking for a geographical location downtown. All cars and trains will turn back there after waiting for a few minutes and proceed back to the South Hills. In the interim, we will run a bus shuttle or rail bridge, as it's known, a bus bridge, from First Avenue Station along Grant Street to Steel Plaza Station. The bus will stop directly in front of the main plaza entrance at Still Plaza, drop off its passengers there for further transfer back to the downtown subway. It'll make a right on 6th Avenue and come back on Ross Street after it's boarded other passengers heading to the South Hills to return to 1st Avenue, where people can then board the escalators and elevators up to our platform and board their rail cars home. From Still Plaza all the way over to Allegheny Station, we will have isolated a number of rail cars, most which will be stored at Allegheny Station when they're not in use. But when they are in use, they will be operating in place of normal rail service between Allegheny and Still Plaza, providing service to all platforms at Allegheny, Northside, Gateway, and Wood Street, where we will then use a small section of what we call single track operations to go to Still Plaza and maintain service there for our riders, but also allow our contractors the opportunity to work on those respective switches. That work should take approximately 1 month, about 30 to 32 days, at which point we will transition to our next slide, or phase B, which will primarily take the month of February to complete. This is the remainder of the work that we did during September, October, and November of 2023, and the operation will be very similar. We will extend our normal rail service beyond 1st Avenue. It will return to Steel Plaza in normal operation, but it will use a different set of tracks known as the Penn Station Spur, which then goes over to the old Pennsylvania Railroad Station, and more importantly, our Penn Station, which is right above our East Busway and its downtown terminus. From there, we will again have a shorter bus bridge using articulated buses, such as the one you saw on the first slide, called the Penn Gateway Shuttle, and it will run from just outside the rail station on the East Busway, exclusively on Liberty Avenue, stopping either at or opposite Wood Street to provide service outside the station there that will be closed entirely. And then they will come to Gateway Station, terminate there, turn around, and reverse the process back to Penn. From Allegheny to Gateway, again, very much like a horizontal incline, we will run a car or a train, depending on any events going on either track back and forth, alternating between Gateway and Allegheny as a version of our subway local. Again, we anticipate that taking approximately 1 month. At the completion of that, we will then proceed into our major transit tunnel closure and that detour. And to that end, I'd like to introduce our Director of Service Planning, Philip St. Pierre, who will take you on that trip. And thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm Philip St. Pierre, Director of Transit Scheduling at PRT. Tonight I'm going to review the service impacts that are going to be experienced on the rail lines and 10 of our bus routes. First up is to discuss our rail lines. All 3 lines are going to be impacted by the Mount Washington Tunnel closure project and will not be able to go through the Mount Washington Tunnel. So the rail lines, all 3 rail lines will detour over the Warrington and Arlington tracks as they go in and out of downtown. It's going to be approximately 7 to 8 minutes of additional travel time in each direction. The one major difference that's going to be experienced is the Silver Line. We are going to operate a Silver Line short between Library and Washington Junction on weekdays. So the 2 rail lines on weekdays that will be going into town and out of town will be the red and the blue. So the silver shorts have been timed up with the blue line with a connection at Washington Junction. So folks on the Silver Line will be able to connect to the blue line and continue into downtown and vice versa. On the weekends, all three lines will go into town. So the red, blue, and silver will go into town and out of town on the weekends. Next slide, please. On the rail line, we'll be adding a pair of stops in Arlington, or off of Arlington. It's going to be Warrington and Allen is going to be the pair of stops, one on the inbound, one on the outbound. These pair of stops that will be utilized for the light rail system are not ADA compliant, and any riders that will need ADA accommodations can still continue to use the 43 or 48 routes, as these will continue to serve all of the stops in the Allentown area. Next slide, please. The first bus route that we're going to talk about that on detour will be the Route 39 Brookline. Most routes that we discussed tonight will follow this same detour. On the inbound, we'll utilize Warrington to Arlington to Carson to Smithfield, and then regular routing. In the outbound direction from Smithfield, we'll operate on Carson to the Wabash Tunnel, to Sawmill Run, to Warrington, then to Haberman, and then continue on the South Busway. So that's going to be the most regular detour on most of these routes today. There are a few exceptions that we'll discuss tonight. Next slide, please. The Route 40 on the inbound will follow that detour from Warrington to Arlington to Carson to Smithfield on the inbound, and on the outbound we'll utilize the Carson to the Wabash Tunnel to Sawmill Run, and then once it turns on to Warrington, we'll turn on to Boggs and resume regular route for the Route 40. The next route will be the Route 41, and this is the same exact routing that the 39 will be doing. We'll be inbound via Warrington, Arlington, then onto Carson, and then onto Smithfield regular routing. And the outbound will be from Smithfield to Carson to the Wabash Tunnel, to Sawmill Run Boulevard, to Warrington, and then Haberman onto the South Busway. The Route 44 will have a little bit of a difference on the inbound. Once it gets to Warrington, it's going to make a right onto Warrington Avenue and not backtrack all the way to South Hills Junction. So it's just going to continue inbound via Warrington, Arlington, and then Carson to Smithfield. And then on the outbound, we'll from Smithfield to Carson to the Wabash Tunnel to Sawmill Run Boulevard, then on to Warrington, and then on to regular routing of the outbound 44. The 51L is also an exception. On the inbound will be normal routing that is currently operating today, but on the outbound we'll utilize Arlington Avenue to Amanda Avenue to Brownsville in the outbound direction. And the next route is the Y1, doing that what we call like the standard detour via Allentown, via Warrington, Arlington to Carson to Smithfield on the inbound, and then on the outbound from Smithfield to Carson to the Wabash Tunnel, to Sawmill Run Boulevard, to Warrington, to Haberman, and then on to the South Busway. The Y45 will do that same exact routing as I previously discussed with the other routes, such as the Y1. And the Y46 will be doing the same routing. And the Y47 will be doing the same routing. And the Y49 will be doing the same routing as well. So those are the 10 bus routes that will be impacted of the Mount Washington Tunnel closure. That's going to begin with the February 23rd, 2025 service change. So like I said, all 3 rail routes will be impacted, and 10 of our bus routes will be impacted. And so that concludes my presentation, and I will turn it over to Amy and Andrew for any questions that anybody may have.
You're muted, Andrew. Andrew, you're still muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So it looks like we have some time for some questions. So I just wanted to have a couple of reminders before we start taking those questions. Participants are asked to use the raise your hand function. It's toward the middle of your screen at the upper portion of the program. You just click that and we'll call on you. We ask that you remain muted until you're called upon. And then those who wish to speak are asked to clearly state their name prior to asking a question or providing a comment. And toward the end of the Q&A, we will give opportunity for those dialed in by phone. And for those dialed in by phone, you press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. So it looks like we have our first question. H. Carl Pierce, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Carl Pierce, and I have two questions. First off, for the Panhandle Bridge closing, maybe I missed it, but is there going to be a shuttle from Station Square, possibly over the Smithfield Street Bridge, over to the First Avenue station? And my second question is, I haven't seen anything at all mentioned about the Silver Line, and I know that is getting older and in need of some work, so I just wonder what plans there are for the Silver Line. Thank you, and I'll mute myself.
So I could take the Panhandle Bridge question. This is Greg O'Hare with PRT, Chief Engineer. So the Panhandle Bridge is currently in design, and we're still working through the planning process for how that will impact operations. So once that information is available, we will have a public meeting on that to make sure that everybody's aware of what those impacts may be. But we're not quite there yet. It's still a little bit premature as we're still in design.
And I assume the second question, Carl, was related to today's Silver Line closure.
No, this is for any long-term rehabilitation of the Silver Line.
Got it. Greg, do you want to speak to that at a really high level?
Yeah, sure. So PRT is evaluating the cost for what it would take to rehabilitate the library line or the Silver Line. And then, that right now we're still working through that. And then from there, then PRT will have to plan for a long-range planning from a funding perspective to see how that would shake out. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Amy, or not.
Yeah, I would just add that there's nothing imminently happening with it. We know that it needs significant, overhaul and updating. And so we're kind of running through different scenario options just internally first to gather our heads around what that would take and develop plans for funding, et cetera, to move ahead.
Is closure a possibility and abandonment of that line?
So we explore that a bit in our long range plan, Next Transit. The line does have a fairly low ridership post pandemic and is in need of, I won't even say we have a cost estimate yet, but hundreds of millions of dollars, I think is safe to say. Greg can correct me if I'm wrong, of updating. And so, we have no imminent plans to make any decisions like that. I think right now what we're trying to do is wrap our head around what the cost is for the updates that are needed, and then to approach those costs at a high level, with our board and our community to, talk about if there are other alternatives that should be explored. So right now we're just focused on the costs of the rehabilitation and updating that is needed as a first step.
All right, I think we can take our second question. Judy Hackle, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Judy?
Sorry about that. I'm Judy Hackle. I'm an Allentown resident and part of the Allentown CDC board. So this is impacting Allentown a lot. We are happy that you will be stopping on Warrington Avenue. So I have two questions. My first question is, I have heard complaints from the people who live along Arlington Avenue that the trolleys may have impacted some of the many landslides that we have had on Arlington Avenue. Is this something you've looked at and are you aware of? You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was saying that I'm not aware of anything to that effect at all, but I wanted to confirm that Greg, also from an engineering perspective, was not aware of anything.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm not aware of that, nor do we have any evidence of that.
All right, well, and my second question was, if it's not causing any impact to the houses along Arlington Avenue, has any thought been given to try to figure out how to get some ADA compliance in Allentown so that we could have our trolley back? You know, our symbol for Allentown for many years was the trolley. We had the first electric trolley, so we love our trolleys. And as you know, a lot of our neighbors have fought to get them back.
Yeah, I can take that one. So we also identified that in our long range plan as something that should be studied further. So that is separate from this project, right? This project is really just about state of good repair and wanting to make sure that we're being respectful, you know, of a community that we have to send that detour operation through by providing the stop. So the stop is temporary. The stop will absolutely be ending when the tunnel opens back up. But longer term, our planning department is preparing to pursue some level of community planning and community involvement around both the Allentown line and if and should there be a future to light rail service on the Allentown line, as well as the Penn Station spur that Chuck mentioned for some of the downtown Plinth work. We've also had significant community interest expressed in potentially bringing that back into regular service as well. So all three of those projects were identified in our long range plan. So looking at the library line and its long-term, you know, long-range vision for how we can keep operating that given its substantial costs, for looking at potential return of light rail service to the Allentown line and looking at the potential return of service to the Penn spur. So none of those have begun yet in terms of any community involvement phases or anything for planning. But we do hope in the next year, we're trying to see if we can bundle all three of them together into one sort of larger project that would just have three separate sections to it. So it is possible that we might be able to advance beginning all or part of those pieces of work in 2025.
Thank you for the information.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to our next question, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Arazm Betov? You can go ahead and
Hello,
unmute
my name is
yourself.
Ibek. Yes, hello, my name is Ibek Rozenbetov. I am a rider of the Civil Line. I have a question. So does PRT have the plan to update or upgrade its light rail vehicle fleet and also related systems such as signaling? Thank you.
Greg, that sounds like a good one for you.
Yep. So yeah, PRT is currently working through the process for the design and procurement of a new light rail vehicle fleet. The existing fleet is about 40 years old. With regard to the actual library line itself, we don't have any designs in hand or in development for the replacement of the components on the library line, like the signaling trackway over at Catenary and whatnot. But as mentioned earlier, we are in the process of studying what that cost would be along the library line, so that can inform us for any future decisions for improvements along the library line.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next question. Nancy Lamazny. Nancy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Nancy, are you there?
It's up on the top where it says Mike.
Thanks, Judy. I was probably doing the same thing. Hey, my little Mike. So when you say that you are not aware of any landslides, I'm also a member of the board and I reside on Arlington Avenue and in the steep slope overlay where there's been a lot of landslide remediation and over $1 million put into William Street. You are not aware of any landslides, But have you done any research? Have you done any surveys? I mean, you're saying you're not aware of it, but have you done any studies? I firmly believe by living on this street and feeling the vibration and asking people from your marketing department, have you ever felt a vibration? Have you ever stood on our sidewalks? The answer is no. So I understand the hilltop, but I really do not understand how they cannot be serviced by a bus that is far more flexible and not doing damage to the steep slope overlay.
Yeah, so I will let Greg chime in a moment that we're not aware of anything, but I believe we already answered that. I don't believe we've done any studies either, but again, I'll let him confirm that in a moment. I do just want to address the fact that bus bridging all of the light rail system is pretty impossible for us right now. In addition to being a significant inconvenience, of course, to the riders, we are continuing to be short operators. That's something that we're continuing to focus on and continuing to build back up. But we would not be able to cover our entire light rail service. We have made the decision to pull the Silver Line out on weekdays so that we are not, which is not because of landslides or vibrations, but it's actually due to electrical load challenges with the hill coming up Arlington Avenue. So that is the reason that the Silver Line is proposed to be short-term so that we aren't running quite as much light rail service. And that is also, to acknowledge to that community too, that that we are having an impact certainly in Allentown by running those vehicles through. So hopefully only running 2/3 of them through rather than 3/3 of them through, also helps with any mitigation of or concerns about noise or otherwise. Greg, just full circle confirming that we have not studied, nor are we aware of anything.
Yeah, that's correct. So PRT hasn't performed any studies in the Allentown area, nor is PRT aware of any slides that may be contributed by LRV traffic, which mostly is relatively minimal, except on brief occasions and here now when we do this detour. PRT has in the past, though, and it's been a number of years, provided service to the Allentown line with the light rail vehicles and then also with the old PCCs as well too. And there hasn't been any evidence that I'm aware of with regard to vibrations impacting or contributing to any slides in the area.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our next question is from Mona Strong. Mona, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. All right. Thank you for this meeting. I'm directionally challenged a lot. I am in Knoxville, up from Judy Haskell from Allentown. So I travel both the 44 Knoxville and the rail lines to get downtown and also to the north side for work. Again, so the tunnels will be closed. Will all the buses also do that, to go down Warrington, down the Allentown? I'm directionally challenged. Sorry about that. But will all the buses do that too? Because I'm kind of concerned on getting to work super early in the morning. I have to be there at 10 to 6. So, when is that actually going to start again? February of 25?
Yes, that's going to start February 23rd, which I believe is a Sunday, 2025, and run through October. We haven't finalized the Sunday in October yet that schedule change will be, but we will get that information out to folks as soon as we can. But it'll be a Sunday, or it'll end on a Saturday, and the new service will go back into effect on a Sunday in October of 2025. And so, yes, as Philip mentioned, the 44 Knoxville will go inbound on Warrington after it turns off of Climax Street. It'll go inbound on Warrington to Arlington to town, and then outbound it'll use the Wabash Tunnel to Sawmill Run Boulevard to Warrington back toward Climax Street to its regular routing.
Okay.
So
they're
it will
not
not
separate.
cut into the junction. I believe today it cut, it serves the junction, South Hills Junction before going through the tunnel. It will not cut down to the junction just to come right back out Warrington again. We didn't
Okay,
have
so
very many riders using that portion of the 44.
Okay, so basically the South Hills Junction will not be used at all during that
Correct.
time.
Correct.
Okay.
You could still access it, Philip. I don't know if you know off the top of your head which stop on Warrington is up the steps from the South Hills Junction. So you still go to South Hills Junction. Say you're in the South Hills and you want to use the T to get to the junction, then you can walk up those steps to Warrington to connect to the 44 there.
Amy,
Okay,
this is
yeah.
Chuck. I can help there. That would be the stop on Warrington Avenue at and opposite Boxton Street.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Greg Lamazny, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for the meeting. I'm another Lamazny. I live on Arlington. And I feel like just wanted to express, my experience with the train. I think in my household, we're looking ahead to any talk of it coming back permanently, the line through Allentown, because I'm trying to understand what the benefit of that is. It seems to me that buses would be very much cheaper and more flexible. And I can tell you, it's like a freight train. It's not a Mr. Rogers fun, cute trolley. These things are, they vibrate, they make noise. The last time they were running, a wall did come down at 1116 Arlington. How do you know if that's would have happened anyway, or if it was all the extra vibration? You won't convince me it wasn't the vibration. But so I guess I wonder what kind of metrics there are, what kind of ridership levels would the neighborhood have to support to make it worthwhile to consider keeping the line open full time? Thank you.
So this is not intended to be a study, an opportunity to study, hey, how many people are using it and therefore should we reopen it or not? So the adding the single pair of stops at Allen Street is sort of a courtesy addition, right, to acknowledge that those vehicles are moving through a significant portion of the neighborhood and trying to add one pair of stops in the middle of that neighborhood so that if folks do desire to get on the light rail vehicle and they don't need the ADA accommodation, that they're able to be convenienced by being able to hop on. We are not going to use this information as should we put the light rail service back? That'll be part of a community planning process and conversations with the community that will happen later. So I don't want to, conflate that this project is setting the stage for that one. They are really two completely separate projects.
All right, we'll move on to our next question. Chris, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, everybody. PRT, thanks for putting this on. It's been a good meeting, nice, professionally well organized, done. So thanks for that. Few questions, comments here. First question is, how do we go about getting a schedule of knowing when the light rail trains will be going inbound and outbound on Arlington? Is that, I'm assuming it's posted on the website somewhere, but just trying to get an idea of how many cars are going to be coming up and down the road. Just as an Arlington Avenue resident, I'll second the gentleman's comment that he just made about the noise, the vibration. I mean, it's a bit alarming, and I just kind of want to get an idea of what to expect. So that's why I'm asking that question.
Philip, do you want to take that one?
We typically post the public timetables roughly 30 days prior to the service change. So we could try to get it out a little earlier. So I would say towards the beginning of the year is when we can expect timetables available.
Okay. And Philip, high level, we're generally matching. It's not going to be an exact match, but we are and at
Yeah.
maybe high level, generally matching the service that the red and the blue line operate today at peak periods, and that all three of the lines operate off peak and weekend. Is that a generalization? That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
So you can look at
complete-
today's schedules too, and kind of you'll just have to ignore the silver line at peak hours, which is generally like 6 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m. It will not be running through Allentown during those hours, but otherwise you can look at the rail schedule today and assume that those trips would be when trips would be coming through.
Okay. Yeah, that gives me an idea just to not look forward to something, but at least I know, what's coming up and everything. So I appreciate that. Second, like comment / question is, yeah, I'm a new resident here, recently purchased a house on Arlington Avenue with the idea that the Allentown rail wasn't going to be coming on a permanent basis. And I know that there's a petition and there's people from the board in Allentown that want it to be reopened permanently. Completely understand that this project has nothing to do with it. And there's a whole community involvement process like down the road. But from my perspective, this does, like, even landslides aside, it does impact the people living here. The noise is kind of unbearable. And, from investing a bunch of money with this house and then also on top of it doing renovations, I could see our home prices drastically decreasing if the rail cars decide to come back to using the Allentown line permanently. So my question is just trying to get ahead of the game, and what down the road, whether it's next year, whenever it may be, what does like that community involvement process look like? I've never really been involved like on a government side with PRT or anything like that. So just trying to get a general idea on how you take residents' opinions, just kind of what that process looks like in general.
Sure, I can start with that one, which is at a high level, we don't exactly know yet. We haven't scoped this project yet. We've not yet studied the return of an old light rail line in our planning department. So it's a little new for us. So usually what we do when we do usually what we do in general when we do a planning project is we build, at least 3 phases of community process and cycle into that project, whether that's redesigning a station or building a new bus rapid transit line, at least 3 phases, right? Something like bus rapid transit might be more like 6 phases of public process throughout. And then when we do a new kind of planning project that we haven't done before, we generally reach out to our partner agencies at other cities to look for similar projects and learn from them about, what worked and what didn't work. So this one we may have to dig a little bit deeper on. I am not sure off the top of my head that I could name 5 other cities that have done a project like this, but we will find them. We have consultants who work, all over the country and help us with these types of things. But that is generally what we do. So we'll find best practices and similar projects in other areas, learn from those, and then develop a scope of work. And then carry out that work with the community. And that does always involve meetings with our elected officials, hyper locally in those communities too. So you can, rest assured that your elected officials will also be involved and informed about the project throughout.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, it looks like we have about 5 minutes left in the meeting. We'll try to get to all your questions, but if something does come up or you have a follow-up question, my email was in the email that you received when you signed up for this. If you'd like to reach out to me, I can get that together and get you some information. So Judy, it looks like you have another question.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I must have not taken my hand down.
No problem. Charlie, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. A quick question about is there any plans for Popular Street on the Red Line to be revamped? It's kind of the crumbliest station in the whole system, isn't it? And is Wood Street ever going to get finished? The front door. That's it.
Thanks. Poplar, I believe we do not have an imminent plan for rebuild. Greg may correct me if I'm wrong, and I think Greg can probably speak to the Wood Street timeline for getting that sidewalk back open too. Oh, well, we have two projects going on at Wood Street. There's a project on the Liberty side of Wood Street, and then there's some very BRT specific work that's happening on the 6th Avenue side of Wood Street.
Yeah, the Liberty Street side's been closed for like a year. And so the connecting buses can't stop in front of the station. They have to go down a couple of blocks.
Yep. Greg, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure thing. So Poplar first. We don't have that station on a list of stations at the moment for rehabilitation, but that's not to say in the future that it wouldn't be considered. With regard to Wood Street, we should have most of the flat work, the concrete work, done here in the next month or so. And you'll start to see more of that open up.
Okay.
All right. Our next question is from Stormy Parson. Stormy, go ahead.
Hi, I live on Warrington Avenue. I know that this is not the same project and has been brought up multiple times, but I will also reiterate the sound vibrations, and specifically on Warrington Avenue, because many cars are not parked correctly on the road. You know, the trolleys will lay on their horn for 10 minutes until somebody comes out and moves their car, and it doesn't matter the hour. But I know you said it was also for convenience for riders to get off and on that don't need ADA compliance, but I know just a couple weeks ago you were running up and over Warrington Avenue, and there were 7 days straight that an ambulance and fire were called to an apartment building on Warrington Avenue and blocked all that traffic. I mean, this is one of the sections that, you know, the trolley runs straight through a neighborhood that doesn't in other ways. For, you know, like Dormont runs between, you know, two parallel roads, for example. This is directly on Warrington Avenue. How do you deal with those issues that arise with the fire department's been at, you know, the high rise? We've had shootings on Warrington Avenue that have blocked it for hours upon hours. How does that get acknowledged and addressed in this as well?
Yeah, so I'll start and then I'll throw it over to Chuck to see if he has anything to add. So, you know, one thing that's different about this project is that this is scheduled service, right? When obviously we run, you know, through Allentown and emergencies. And so emergency vehicles aren't thinking about things like, oh, the light rail is going to come by here and get totally stuck and they'll park where they park because cars can usually, you know, maneuver their way around them. We have been coordinating very closely with the utility companies and the city of Pittsburgh on this upcoming work. And so they are aware we will be running scheduled service through this area for most of 2025. And so have asked them to be cognizant of that. The city of Pittsburgh's been very good in working with us on some planned signal timing updates to make sure we are moving both general traffic and light rail vehicles through here well. We do this in Beachview, so it's not new to us. I know it's not an everyday occurrence in Allentown, but it's not new to us or the city of Pittsburgh. We do know how to do this as long as we all know that it is happening, right? So, and I know Chuck has been working with the utilities and making sure they're aware so that they aren't planning any, you know, improvement projects or other construction projects that are, you know, further complicating the corridor here. Chuck, is there anything that you want to add there?
I think you covered it, Amy. I will just confirm that, yes, we have been in touch with various utilities and authorities, Duquesne Light, Verizon, PWSA, to make sure as best as possible, except for emergencies on their own, that the rail service and the detoured bus service will not be disrupted, that any planned work that they have is, you know, planned accordingly along with our plans. We've also coordinated very closely with the Pittsburgh Police as well as the Pittsburgh School Crossing Guards to let them know about the oncoming increase in bus and light rail service. We work very cooperatively with them through our Port Authority Police Department. They in turn use our facilities, our busways, our transit tunnel when it's available. So we've tried to make everybody as aware as possible of this situation that's forthcoming. And we believe we've done some good level of detail on that, and they're very aware of it this time. Thanks, Amy.
All right, Nancy, it looks like you have another question.
I do. When you are doing the best practices of reaching out to a community regarding bringing a rail line back, there really is no other way to say this than the dominant landlord up on the hilltop is adamantly trying to get this rail back to increase his property value. He doesn't live here. And a petition is being circulated. Now, if he was my landlord, I would probably sign it because he is my landlord. But that does not represent what the majority of people that I speak to that actually feel and experience the train. That is not their experience, and they definitely do not want this back. So it is very contentious, but if there is a way to field people's relationship with RA360 and their relationship and wanting this back, they have staff bring back the T rallies themselves with their staff. So it gives this false perception. And this is one of their primary focuses.
Yeah, thanks. That's helpful context. And I'm taking notes on all the helpful feedback for the planning project because our deputy chief planning officer is here tonight as well. So I know she's also listening and taking notes. And we will get this to our planning team so that I think it's really helpful context for them to be aware of. If I had thought ahead, I would have made sure they were here too, just to listen. I know it's hard to separate a future project that's coming that you may not feel comfortable about from the work that's happening this year. So I appreciate the context, and I'll make sure it gets passed on to our team.
All right, Elise McDonald, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Elise, do you have a question? Elise, you can go ahead and unmute. All right, we're gonna move on to Laura.
Hi, my name is Laura Shafransky. I'm a resident of Beachview, where we do love our trolley line. The Belasco stop has been a many year coming high platform stop that we are really happy to have, but how is that going to affect street traffic on Broadway Avenue and pedestrian traffic on the sidewalks where people will be trying to access St. Catherine's Church and the public library?
Yeah, so go ahead, Greg.
No, go ahead, good.
I was just going to say that we are, when we get a little bit closer, we don't have a defined timeline on Belasco yet. So once we have a really defined timeline, we are planning to host a Belasco specific community meeting. We know it's a really hyper local, want to get into the nitty gritty details station design. So we are planning to do that. So look out for that at some point in 2025 once we have a better sense of when we'll be able to start that construction, and then we can get into all those nitty gritty details. But high level, I was just going to say that the project is designed so that vehicles can still make turning movements and pedestrians can still cross. There are some nuances to the pedestrian crossing. It's a little bit different because you're kind of crossing in between station components of our station, but at street level, you can kind of see that a little bit in the rendering here. But we will definitely dig into all that detail with a community meeting, probably in person, at the church nearby or somewhere in the library nearby, so that we can really talk about that with the folks who use that station on a daily basis. Greg, did I miss anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add, so this is for everyone on the call's edification and knowledge. This is similar to Allentown in that it's street running light rail vehicles. So we have the concrete pavement with the embedded rail that the train runs on. And in the rendering in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you can see the station, parallel stations across from each other, slightly offset. There is a crosswalk, which is depicted by the rectangular piano keys. So that would be the crosswalk to walk completely across the roadway from one sidewalk to the other sidewalk in the station area. And then also to point out to folks is that where the train is running, you see the train is approaching there. That's also dual use in that that's where vehicular traffic will also run as well too. It'll be street running with vehicular traffic in front of or behind the trains, however it may be. And there'll be 2 lanes of traffic, 1 lane in each direction for both light rail and for automobile traffic.
I'm sorry, I believe you misunderstood my question. My question was, how will it affect pedestrian and vehicular traffic during construction? Will it be, Broadway will be shut down completely? Will people be able to access the library from the Crane side of Beachview? Or will we have to go a block around to come back to reach the library or St. Catharines?
Sure. My apologies there for the misunderstanding. As Amy mentioned, we will come back out to the public in a more detailed public briefing. We will have traffic control plans that we can show folks on where the crosswalk passages will be. Right. So during construction, there will be ability to cross the street, obviously not in the middle of the construction area. And then there will be some closure periods and single track periods as noted, though. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right. Ashley, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Ashley. Thank you for holding this. I am a light rail rider coming from the South Hills, St. Anne's, and then catching a connecting bus to Oakland. I'm trying to weigh my options with all these kind of rerouting throughout the year. So, and I'm getting kind of confused with the timelines for the new bus routes, the proposed bus routes, and the BRT. Can you kind of give a quick overview of how those timelines may overlap or?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah, apologies. So let's go in chronological order. Starting in early January, the light rail will carry you to First Ave. And then if you need to connect to an Oakland bus, you could either walk up to Fifth Avenue or Forbes to connect to that Oakland bus, or you can take that bus shuttle that Chuck talked about up to Steel Plaza and catch your Oakland bus there. And then same thing in reverse. Starting with phase B, which is likely to be early February into late February, potentially early March. You'll be able to take the T all the way to Steel Plaza. I presume you probably get off there if you're then connecting to Oakland. Yes. So that should be fairly normal for you. Starting on February 23rd, you will have a 7 to 8 minute longer travel time getting into and out of downtown on either light rail or your bus, whichever you're taking from the South Hills. It sounds like you're taking light rail. So light rail will go up and over Mount Washington through Allentown. So it'll take you a little longer to get into downtown. And then again, bus is normal in downtown. We are currently constructing the University Line, which is a bus rapid transit project. The service detours and things for that. We may have a few more detours in the spring when we're finishing up some of the downtown elements of that project. But they will be quite small in nature, right? Maybe needing to shift off of one block or another. But broadly, the buses that are in downtown today will continue to be in downtown serving Oakland throughout the remainder of that construction. And then we will be beginning to do construction in Uptown and Oakland for that project in 2025. We'll be having a public meeting in January to talk about that. But those will be, fairly limited construction impacts in terms of bus service. Bus service will still be able to get through Uptown and into Oakland and back again. We have a planning project that's ongoing that's a few years out in terms of implementation, and that's called Bus Line Redesign, which is proposing lots of changes to our entire bus network. So that is a further out project that will have another public engagement phase in the spring with draft 2.0. And then from there, we will begin to do implementation planning and begin to create a timeline for when we might put in some of those bus route changes. But
Okay,
that's,
all
I'd
right.
say that's a farther out thing. That's more of a discussion planning project right now than a reality yet.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I can still kind of utilize any, but like I'm thinking about taking the 36 and that won't be affected for a while then.
Yep, the 36 will be a good one because it won't have the detour since it doesn't use the tunnel, unlike most of the South Hills buses. Yep.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
All right, Alex, you can go ahead. Alex Blue.
Yes, thank you for having this. Our regular Latvia Wado, and I have two questions. The first question is I get on at St. Anne Station for outbound, would I have to take a blue line or red line to Washington Junction to get a silver line?
Yeah, so I think I understood, but let me make sure I understood what you asked. You're asking if you're taking the silver line, how you would go about doing that. And yes, you would take the blue line to Washington Junction. And then the schedules will be set such that the silver and blue lines kind of come together at the same time. So when you're getting off your blue line train, and presumably your silver line train will be there waiting for you and it will depart a few minutes later. So you'll get off one and on the other and then do the opposite. If you're traveling at rush hour, if you're traveling in the middle of the day or on the weekends, you'll just take the silver line all the way into town.
So the silver line going to Washington Junction is just for peak hours.
Correct.
Okay, and I have a question about Allentown. Will the lot will serve every station as always except for Station Square?
I think I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat that one unless anyone else caught it. I don't think I got that one. I got
did.
Allentown. Oh, go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I did, Amy. The question was, will it serve every station except for Station Square? And that answer is yes. You're correct. But we will be running a rail car shuttle during this construction period from Station Square into the city to be able to transfer either to Station Square from the downtown area, specifically First Avenue, or to come from Station Square to catch any of those services at First Avenue or any of the other stations downtown.
Thank you so much, Amy and Greg.
Sure.
All right, looks like we are finished with questions. I'll give a chance to anyone who's dialed in by phone to go ahead and ask a question. You press *6 to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I live on Arlington, 437 Arlington, and I just wanted to go on record and say that having them run all the time is very disruptive, and it shakes the house and everything. But I just wanted to go on record by saying that I'm not exactly for this.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. We wish we didn't have to close the tunnel and repair it. But I appreciate that sentiment and it's understandable.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions they'd like to ask? All right. With that, we thank you for joining us here tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.